Why did the DA take the president to court over the cabinet reshuffle? Is the country run by the judiciary or the executive? Would the ANC's calling on the president to have the court judgment reviewed be seen as just a delaying tactic? And has this week's court ruling undermined the powers of the presidency? What time is it? It's question time. Khotsong and welcome to the show. My name is Mcebisi. The recent cabinet reshuffle by President Jacob Zuma is back under the spotlight. This after the North Gauteng High Court ordered the president to explain his reasons for dismissing former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and his deputy Mcebisi Jonas, amongst others. This follows the Democratic Alliance's urgent application with the court on April 24 to force the president to disclose reasons for his cabinet reshuffle on March 30. Heading his judgment, Judge Bashir Vally said, and I quote, "The announcement caused a great deal of consternation for a significant proportion of the populace," close quote. As breaking news, though, the president's lawyers are reported to have applied for leave to appeal the court order. We extended an invitation to the presidency, but they are unable to participate due to prior commitments. Actually, Moani is in Tanzania with the president there. We are live, and therefore you can call us and air your views. The numbers to dial 089-1104-210. Our Twitter handle at QuestionTime24. My guest, Professor Susan Boysen. She's a political analyst from Wits University. And joining us from our Parliament studio is James Selfie, who is a DA's chairperson of the Federal Executive. Now, let me welcome both of you here. Prof, welcome. James, let me just start with you. Does Helen Villa have to account to anybody else when she hires and fires MECs? I mean, at some point she had a male-only cabinet there, and people just made noise, and that was it.
Well, our rules internally demand that if a mayor or a premier, or in due course a president, changes his or her executive, then they have to provide reasons, and those reasons are adjudicated by our federal executive, which then gives approval or not, as the case might be. But in all cases, the reasons for those reshuffles have to be given, and if they're not logical reasons, if they're not rational reasons, then we tend to turn those down. So we are very definitely guided by the principle of rationality, and if Helen Villa were to want to rejig her cabinet, then she would have to follow that procedure.
So in this case, the president is given or afforded the powers to hire and fire as he pleases. These are powers which the Constitution gives him. Now, you are challenging that. Zizi Kodwa, who is the spokesperson of the ANC, is quoted as saying, "The Constitution of the Republic says the president must appoint ministers and deputy ministers and assign them roles. That decision, as well as the decision to dismiss a minister, is political. Therefore, the judge's ruling and reasoning is political." This is a judge who has taken a particular political posture.
Yeah, well, in terms of our constitutional state, no power of the president, no executive power of the president may be exercised irrationally, because if it is exercised irrationally, it is therefore illegal and unconstitutional. Now, there have been a series of constitutional court judgments that have underscored that, stretching back to the middle of the 1990s. So it isn't that the president has an unfettered discretion to change his cabinet. If he wants to change his cabinet, he has to do so for logical and rational reasons. Now, what we have asked for and what the court has granted is those reasons and the record of decision, so that we can judge for ourselves and the people of South Africa can judge for themselves whether the president acted rationally and therefore legally and constitutionally. So the wonderful thing about our Constitution is it doesn't give the executive unfettered discretion to do whatever he or she likes. Those decisions that they take must be rational in order to be legal.
Rational is relative, Prof.
Yes, it can be, but it is also, can also be assessed relative to the function that is being exercised, relative to the information that was available at the time of making the decision, and relative to the impact that that will have. We see also in Zizi Kodwa's statement that great emphasis, but it could just be said it was political, and that is another bridge that will be crossed within the second phase of the DA's application goes to actually review it after they've had access to the reasons for the decision. And I think then the big debate is going to be when is political rational or not. I think much of the debate currently assumes that the two are two opposites. It's not necessarily the case. I think as we do in political studies, as we do in policy analysis, one can dissect it and go quite a long way to argue whether, to decide whether it makes sense in the circumstances or not.
So you may as well take, and by you I'm not referring to you as Susan Boysen, but as an individual, it means you may as well take President Zuma to court then and say, look, your appointment was irrational because the court found that you are in contempt of the Constitution.
It can certainly go a long way to argue many other cases. I think the state, the executive in particular, so far, have been quite fortunate, quite lucky in a way, by their own standards, to escape so many more assessments of how rational their decisions have been. So I think it's also a symptom of the time, of the context in which we operate now, that the country and even in the ANC itself, so many people have lost so much faith in the president and the opposition parties, that there is the opening now to take the president for better accountability. In the past, it would simply have been a dominant party that intuitively protect the president, say everything is rational, everything is just hunky-dory. Now it is not the case anymore. So the weakening in the ANC and then the doubt that you see start emerging about their own leader, that has opened the possibility for better accountability. And that is a great time in democracy in South Africa. And opposition parties, the DA and others as well, are certainly using that opportunity.
Jim South, the presidency is going to review this.
Well, he's given leave to, he's applied for leave to appeal on a number of grounds, most of which were rejected by the judge in the original application. We will obviously oppose that application for leave to appeal. And I cannot see, quite frankly, given the very careful judgment by Judge Vally, that the president stands much chance of an appeal or leave to appeal succeeding. And frankly, the president has had a particularly bad record of appealing, and in this particular court, in 2 occasions over the last 6 months, he has lost the case and then been refused leave to appeal. One of them, in particular, concerns the reinstitution of charges against him, the 783 charges of fraud, corruption, money laundering, etc., that were reinstituted by the Gauteng North High Court last year.
Okay. Now, in simple terms, does the DA want Pravin Gordhan and Mcebisi Jonas back in Treasury?
Well, I mean, we would obviously like them back in Treasury, but I think we have a problem there in the sense that Mr. Pravin Gordhan has indicated, I think, that he's not terribly keen to be in the cabinet any longer, and who can blame him? What we are very interested in is to know on what basis the president discharged him.
Okay.
And you will recall that at the time, several senior members of the ANC, the so-called top 6, indicated that the President had used the so-called intelligence report as the basis for discharging Mr. Gordhan. And we are very keen to know whether that was one of the reasons why Mr. Gordhan was fired. And if so, what is this intelligence report? Who wrote it? On what basis did they come to the conclusions they came to? And so on. And I'm absolutely certain that if we got access to the actual documents and the reasons that were adduced by the President on the 31st of March, not now, but on the 31st of March, a reasonable court would find that that decision to fire him was irrational and led to huge damage in the South African economy.
Good news, you are in KZN. Welcome.
Yes, welcome, Paul. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? Good news?
I'm fine.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Paul, I can't hear properly, but I want to put my concern in this matter.
Okay.
Yeah, no, according to your question, DA is playing a political game. That's all. Even the judges in court or court, they are not God. They are people like me, where I'm staying in a rural area. They got a lot of mistakes. Since yesterday, today, I've been reading the news that one man was sentenced for 40 years for, which is now they find that it was wrong.
Yes.
So courts got their own mistake. So otherwise, today, as I'm speaking, I've been looking them there in the parliament. They've been DA fighting to Melusi Gigaba because they don't like him. He took the position for their members, which is Pravin. All I want to say is courts are not a court. People, they must think every people will rely on court like a God people who are there. No, okay. They are not a God.
All right, good news there, making a point that, look, courts are not God. Actually, they make mistakes, giving a case study there, or rather a case law that somebody was sentenced to 40 years and they just found out that he was wrong. But, well, we're taking your calls on 089-1104-210. Professor Poison, the impression, or not even impression, there seemed to be a tradition which is emerging that the courts are going to intervene in political decisions. What are the risks?
You know, to put that in context, of course, South Africa is a constitutional state. The courts are not the bosses. The courts are interpreting the constitution. The courts are in line with the executive and the legislatures. They all are the three arms of government, and they're interdependent and they overlap in many respects as well. And it is exactly the courts that have the duty to interpret whether actions, executive in this case, the president in this case, is in concordance with the law, with the constitution, and that is what they are doing. The courts have that absolute constitutional obligation to be doing that, and I think that is what they're doing it. And that's where I think many people, and we've seen who have been defending it, is mostly the group very closely associated with the president, Kebim Patswe, Mzwanele, Mani, they are the people who have come out and said, no, this is judicial overreach. It's a big debate. When does the judiciary overreach? But I think in this case it is not, my interpretation is it's not the case, because they are not saying what should be decided. They are simply interpreting whether it has been done in terms of, for example, Rule 53 that Judge Vally mentioned in his judgment yesterday, and they have to interpret whether it is done in terms of the Constitution. That is the task in terms of our Constitution, and it's one of the founding clauses of the Constitution that the Constitution is the supreme law of the state. So I think the courts are really doing their work in this case.
Francois, you are in the Eastern Cape. Welcome.
Thank you, Paul, and good evening. I've not seen you for a long time. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Paul, thank you for this opportunity to ask the question. What comes up is the decision that the President has taken, was it a good one or was it a bad one? We should bear in mind that, here, the President is a leader of the country and he has to account for every decision he's taking. Now, following his sacking of the two ministers, who signed the nuclear deal soon after that? That raises some questions as to whether the President did act rationally or irrationally. Thank you.
But Francois, there's no nuclear deal that has been signed.
Was it not?
No.
So according to the media, there was such a speculation that there was something like that that was done.
Yeah, no, that was found to be incorrect, yeah. Okay. But thanks very much. You've made your point clear there. James Salfi, are you trying to run the country through the bench?
No, most certainly not. But what we are trying to do is to make sure that the government keeps within the bounds that the Constitution provides. And we have a Constitution. We are very proud of that Constitution. I was part of the drawing up of that Constitution. And what we want to make sure is that what we said in that Constitution is actually adhered to by the various role players. And the simple case that we are bringing is that did the President exercise his mind properly when he fired Pravin Gordhan from the cabinet? And it's not that the President didn't understand that there were likely consequences of that, because about 15 months before that, he fired another finance minister called Mr. Nene, and the currency fell through the floor and the ratings agencies got disturbed, and then Pravin Gordhan was put into the role 4 days later. And so he must have anticipated that there were going to be cataclysmic consequences from the sacking of Mr. Pravin Gordhan that were going to affect our economy, that were going to affect joblessness in South Africa, and we already have over 9 million unemployed South Africans. And to then go ahead and make what we regard as being an irrational decision needs to be taken on review. Otherwise, we would be failing in our duty as a opposition party in Parliament.
Okay. Bitani, you are in, is it Rustenburg?
Hi, Umpo.
Hi, welcome.
I'm okay, and yourself?
I'm very well, thanks for the call.
You are speaking to Mr. Sono at Bethany.
Oh, that is on in Bethany. Oh, yes. Hey, Akhosi Mamkhali.
Akhosi Mamkhali Morana.
Yes.
Kobo pariswane modikwe kwa.
Mre.
Hey, but then for
yeah.
I don't mind going English, but let me just put it in Tswana, so as you can correctly translate it to, especially to Mr. James Self there.
Okay.
Mpo.
Yeah.
Please just tell Mr. James Self that they are wonderful job they are doing. Lot of black communities around the rural areas. We are so wonderful and we are so happy about what they are doing. Please, they must help the President to account for any wrong they are doing. He's doing.
Okay.
Please, we are so voiceless. We are so very, very voiceless. Let DA keep on doing the right thing they are doing.
Okay. So
really, I'm asking, go back to James Salford. Re nahar na mafuku.
Yeah.
Ke bona mafuku a rona re kopa gore ba idile ntsheo. Ba sa tshaba sepa ba tseba gore ba thabantsho. Millions of them, they are behind what they are doing. They are doing a very steady, a good job. May the God bless James Self and the DA leaders.
So,
thank
you very much, Saul. They're calling us from Bethany. Now, James Self, well, a complimentary call there. But then, I want to know, suppose you win the case, then what?
Well, if we win the case, the court would presumably set aside the discharge of Mr. Gordhan from the cabinet. But then what is provided in the Constitution is that the courts have the right to make what is called a just and equitable order under those circumstances. And what we would want the court to do is to apply its mind to what would be a just and equitable order under the circumstances, because whether that is simply just to declare that the decision to sack Mr. Gordhan was irrational and therefore unlawful would in itself be a victory, because it would underscore accountability and transparency in our country and underscore the necessity that every executive action, whether that is pardoning an offender, whether that is bestowing an honour, whatever it might be, cannot be constitutional unless it is rational. And what we are looking for is to enforce that rule of law and that test of rationality in our executive decisions.
Okay, Msheri, welcome to Question Time.
Yes, Mpo, how are you this afternoon, your guest?
I'm very well, thanks for the call.
All right. Mpo, it's just unfortunate ANC is not there. I just want to find out from the ruling party, what role do they want the court to play? Because we are being a constitutional democracy. Because it is not only for the ANC, for any other political party that want to be in power. If there is something that needs to be clarified, the court is the only part of the constitution that they can do that, they can play that role. If the ANC doesn't want the court to play that role, what are they saying? What role do they want the court to play? Because the court is there for explaining what is the parliament is failing to understand, like Yoangat, like in case where it was clear that they said after the judgment that they were not aware. Now that the court has explained what is the role of government, now they're able to implement. What do they want the court to do? Because it's there to play that role. Any other political body that want to be in power, they need to be clear what is their responsibility as the ruling party.
Okay, Msheri, thank you very much there. Now, Prof, is the ANC under siege? And I mean, the president has been losing these cases, eh?
Mm-hmm. The ones that he hasn't had postponed and on appeal and so on, he has been losing. The president has not really been winning his cases. And yes, the arms deal cases, the 783 charges, etc., that has come for the duration of his term. He is now on the last legs of his term, and he is fast losing power in his own party, but also there are diehards in his own party, and that means he is under siege, but his own party, it's the Zumas, it's his faction, who are largely, not only but largely in Parliament, who are in the NEC, who are overpowering the NWC. So he has got that protective cordon around that is still protecting him. But he is under siege. Had it not been that those ones in Zuma's faction were so protective, known that they don't even have a political future under another faction of the ANC, they would have seen more of the writing on the wall. Because if we look at opinion polls, the president's popularity ratings are in the low 20%. Nationally, people who think the president is doing a good job or a very good job, they come about 20-26% in that range, apparently, are saying, yes, it's a good job. And I think that is under siege, for sure. And more than that, if the ANC is not careful, they will be under siege, because they are standing loyally, generally, many of them, the ones that matter, who staff those powerful positions, they are protecting the president, but he is under siege. And it's because of his own doing. It's not because of external factors, it's not external enemies, it's not the people who at one stage were argued to have been lining up with Pravin Gordhan in a plot to unseat the government. It's not those kind of people.
But, Prof, I mean, in this case, the president is made to defend somebody whom he didn't even want. He didn't want to put Malusi there. He didn't get his man, by the way.
Yes, that's one of the wonderful ironies. Everybody was so busy fending off Brian Molefe that they weren't even fending off Malusi Gigaba. And whoopsie-cam, people didn't have the time to oppose him. That's people who light of the night of their long daggers, that Malusi slipped in there. Yes, and he pretends that he was wanted Des van Tonder there, but so he's sitting with ministers of finance that are his second and third and fourth choices.
Well, let's wait and see what happens. Himself, thank you very much for your time, and we hope to talk to you well, with time, I guess. But thanks very much, Sandboysen there, Professor Sandboysen from Wits University there. She's a political analyst. And that was question time for today from me and the entire crew. Mudzimu awaitenga vutu magondoni na zindirano. Ave khotso.